take what you do every day and be honest with yourself. You can't just say like, I'm just so busy. Well, busy with what?
Yeah.
Like everybody's busy, but you know, with what?
What's up, friends? Welcome back to the RE Junkies podcast, where we supply your regular fix of all things real estate. Make sure you're the first to get your dose of the RE Junkies podcast by subscribing on your favorite podcasting platform or YouTube. I'm Brooks O'Hearn, joined by my co-host Kaiten Murphy and our good friend Matt Ruggiero. Matt, how are you today?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited. So, for those of you who don't know Matt, he is the COO of Better Path Homes, which is an amazing real estate. I don't even want to call you guys an investment company. You're like a literal machine here in Charlotte. They're some of the most honest, genuine, just like family forward people that I've ever met, which is probably why you've had so much success there. Matt's also a licensed real estate broker, which is actually how we met.
That's right.
When you were selling your house. And that was probably the one time I like actually cold called anybody. And I cold called Matt because I couldn't find a house in the neighborhood my client wanted to be in. And I was like, hey, are you considering selling your house? He was like, actually, I am.
Right. Pre-market selling, my favorite tactic, but we'll get
Yep.
into that later, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, that is how I met Matt here in Charlotte. But Matt, you didn't start your career in real estate, right?
No, yeah, I have a pretty crazy background. So I went to Virginia Tech and graduated 2010 for mining engineering, actually. So
Whoa.
yeah, I was into that kind of stuff, and it was a really good group of guys and girls, and we ended up studying mining. And I had 3 internships throughout college, and was really into project engineering. Got hired right out of college from Cargill, which is a biggest privately owned company in the world. Actually, they do mainly food, but yeah, I got into mining with them, salt mining. So when I say I went into the salt mines, that is very literal. So my first job was in Ithaca, New York, Lansing, which is down the street from Cornell and all that stuff. We worked 2,400 feet underground, mining a salt deposit about 15 feet high. I was a project engineer, building conveyors and building all kinds of stuff and solving some problems down there for those guys. My wife was not a fan of the small town living, and she's a nurse, so she can kind of pick up and go everywhere. But I am not a person who could pick up and go everywhere. I got headhunted by 3M, post-it notes and all those things. They were starting a mining department to really focus on their 40,000 products and making them more available for mining. So I was able to work with them for a couple of years and a couple of patent applications, and just a really fun time over there. I learned a lot about being creative, separating yourself, and kind of branding, right? A lot of just cool stuff. And, they would have engineers come in that created the command strip, or they patented the whatever dentist equipment. And these people are just amazing. So that was awesome. 2016, we had a kind of downturn in the market. They looked at mining. They said, this is fun, but we'll just go back to selling respirators, and let me go. And that was too bad. So my wife and I looked around Minnesota, and we loved St. Paul, but it was time to go, right? Our families were from Cleveland and Buffalo, New York. They were really far, and it was really cold up there. And my cousin said, hey, why don't you look at Charlotte? Charlotte's a really cool city. It's kind of similar to Minneapolis. And so I did. And I looked for a house, and also was like, let me get into real estate. I really enjoy the investing side and the numbers. Let me get my license while I'm waiting for another job. The other job never came. And I got approached by Michael Bowman, who's owner of Bowman Real Estate. He was actually going to help me buy my house. We ended up renting instead. And yeah, we became kind of partners, and he was my broker in charge, and he taught me pretty much everything I needed to know. And said, hey, you're an engineer. You're pretty smart. Why don't you get into investors and handle all my investors? And then that was pretty much how I got started.
And I mean, you make it sound so simple, but like huge career change in the middle of that, and also life change because you moved to Charlotte.
Yeah, and my wife is the reason. She was at the time an RN, and then is now currently a nurse practitioner. But at the time, she was a cancer nurse, and she could get a job anywhere. She's the best person ever and very outgoing, very friendly, and has that smile that makes patients feel better, right? So
Mhm.
she was the reason we could do this. We had some savings, but she was the one who got a job within 4 days, very supportive of me. So she said, you know what, if this is what it's going to be, then it's going to be what it is. So she let me have that. And actually, the severance from 3M ran out the day I got my first commission check. So it was kind of one of those things that all the stars aligned. But yeah, it was a crazy transition.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, okay, you're here, you're in Charlotte, you're working for a really large real estate firm. You've kind of started to dip your toe into investing. Did they provide training for you to learn how to work with investors? Because, I mean, Brooks and I talk about this all the time. Working with an investor client is like 180 from working with a first time home buyer or a move up buyer. So, did you kind of have to self teach or were you given some training on that?
Yeah, so I was pretty self-taught. So I tried to get some buyers just the regular old way with Zillow leads, all that kind of stuff. I had a couple clients. Like I said, I closed my first deal that September. So I moved here January 2016 or something like that. It took me a good, solid 6, 7 months, like it usually does for new agents to get their first commission. But it was a slog, man. I was not interested in the husband and wife driving to 30 houses thing, right?
Yeah.
I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then Michael said, hey, I've got 3 or 4 investors who I try to keep pretty happy. He had a property management business, huge property, like 1,000 doors, and said, hey, like, why don't you manage these guys? They want to consistently bring in new stuff. So, like, why don't you help them out and kind of figure this out? Well, I'll tell you what, when somebody tells me, hey, I want a house that matches this criteria, when you're just, husband wife combo, they're lying. They never agree that that's what it is, right? But an investor says, "Hey, I want this house with this criteria. I'll find it. I'll give it to them." They said, "That's good. Write it up." I like that a lot more. And I had a guy in Orange County, California, come in who said, "Hey, I've got about 3 million bucks. I need to spend it over the next 6 months. Let's buy some houses." I got him 9 houses in 2 months, and I opened my eyes to like, oh wow, this can actually be something that you can kind of scale. And then from there, Michael did have one of the large hedge funds that was in the Charlotte market under his uh, employ. And he said, why don't you take over for these guys? And, my life kind of changed forever. I learned high volume sales. I learned how to go from a 4 house a month to a 60 house a month agent and really just exploded up. So, I did that for like 3 years, and there came a point in the road where I wasn't going to be doing that anymore because my wife said, I don't even know who you are. I don't see you anymore. We had our first daughter, and she's like, you've got to come back to earth here. It's time to stop spinning off the planet. So that's kind of where the fork in the road came. This decision time number 2 for us, I
Yep.
guess.
So let's talk a little bit about that then, because this is something that Brooks and I are really passionate about. One of the big reasons we started this podcast is because real estate is one. It's not the way they make it look on TV and all of those things. There's a lot of ebbs and flows in a real estate career. There's some really high highs. There's some really low lows. So it kind of sounds like this fork in the road. I mean, you've got on paper very very successful. You're having 60 houses a month is insane, but you also have no free time and no time to spend with your family. So let's talk a little bit about kind of a low point in your career.
Yeah, and it got to be where, and we had a NICU baby as well. She was 33 weeks. That was tough as it was. Now, granted, it's good to have a flexible job like real estate, but to be kind of in that position was tough. And then to have to just be on all the time for an investor of this caliber was great on paper, a lot of money, but it also became such a tough time. And then, Michael and I kind of went our separate ways as well. Stuff happened in his life, and nothing, I get it. I get where he was coming from. He kind of wanted to take his client back and grow them past where I could. I think at the end of the day, you can only do so much. And the writing was on the wall too. If it's family time for Matt, like that's it. The 24/7 is over. So we went our separate ways, and having a non-compete with somebody is stressful. So I think having that kind of restriction to a real estate business is hard, right? To build something up and then just not be able to talk to that group and start all the way over again was was a tough thing for me. My wife was actually in school to become a nurse practitioner, so she didn't have really too much going on. So it was tough. You go from this crazy luxurious lifestyle to really starting over again. My wife, yeah, again, she was the one who held it together. It was interesting to go from that to nothing, right? To like, okay, you got to support us again while I transition one more time. And actually, that's how I got to the Betters. So Zach and Steph Betters are the ones who hired me on to Better Path Homes. I called Zach and I said, "Listen, man, I need a W-2 job right now. I've got a tough time." They wanted to work with me, so they couldn't, non-compete reasons. So he said, "Listen, man, you let us know. We'll find a spot for you." So I ran their flips for about 6 months, and then they said, "You're a little overqualified for this. Why don't you run the company?" So, got my got into COO, and then from there, the kind of journey back up began from, again, just a tough transition. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that mindset shift. So first of all, the mindset shift from going from an agent selling 4 houses a year to 60 houses a year and then starting over again. I mean, what were you learning along the way? What were you having to like what was the self-talk kind of along the way that you're like, "Nope, we're going to make it through this." Um talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah, so it's funny. Zach actually had the same experience, Zach Betters, where he was working at the hospital. He was I guess, a nurse practitioner as well. He made the switch too from like 4 or 5 patients a day to like 15 or 20 or whatever. So he had a similar shift. So he understood, kind of my skill set too, which made him really excited. But when you go from an agent that's closing a couple houses a month to one that's closing 60 or 50, for somebody who is so demanding, you need to look at your whole entire path of everything that you're doing, and you need to say what can go, what can stay, and what do I need to do, and what can somebody else do, right? So you really have to look at your whole business and think, okay, 60 contracts a day. I worked on templates in DocuSign. I could write an offer for somebody in 3 minutes. And that's like with them signing it, right?
Yeah.
And like there was that part of it. There's how do I get pictures? Well, have one of the Uber drivers that go and take pictures of a house and like do. So there's all of these different things that you can start doing in your career as a real estate agent. And then when I switched over to a kind of Better Path Homes general, hey, we buy investment properties and we want to build houses, right? Okay, well, we're doing like one or two a month or one or two a week or whatever, right? How do I get them to 100, 200, 300 a year, right? It's the same thing. What are we doing? And like, how do we kind of make it less and less and less to where we're only focused on the things that move the needle every day? Like, get out all the garbage and like, let's really focus in on what can we do better than anybody else and then extrapolate that to infinity. And that's even like the hedge funds get a lot of crap because they're like, oh, I need this exact house, right? This little like snippet of the market. Well, that's what makes them so good. And for us to do the same thing, like I brought that experience to Better Path Homes, and then that made them explode up to where we are, now. So a lot of that learning is like take what you do every day and be honest with yourself. You can't just say like I'm just so busy. Well, busy with what?
Yeah.
Like everybody's busy, but with what? And be honest with yourself. That's the other part that people have a really tough time with. They think they're busy and they're really not.
Yeah.
It's funny to hear the agents and the investors who are in the business and they're not running it the way you're saying, the way you're describing, and they might be doing 1 or 2 deals a month, and they're like, "I'm so busy. I'm so busy," and it's like, doing what?
Yeah.
What what could you possibly be doing?
And like I said, with the hedge fund, I mean, it was 80 hours a week in front of a computer. People think, oh, they say like, oh, I work 80 hours a week. Well, that's counting shower and get in the car and then drive to get lunch. And like, yeah, just because you were working 7 to 4 or 5, like how many hours did you actually put in of hard work? I guarantee like 2 or 3, right? So it's like, I was in front of a computer doing work, and that work was even more streamlined than a typical person's work. Like if a regular agent or a standard agent can write an offer and send it out in 35, 45 minutes, I can write 8 offers in the time that that person did one. And if I'm working 80 hours and it's work and they're, like I said, really working 20, 30 hours, you can see how I can just start running laps around people. And then you get kind of the part-time people who are like, yeah, I'll do real
Mhm.
estate on my off times. Again, I would destroy those people. So it's like, you've got to understand, like, and when you want to put the work in, it's not just the work, it's the streamlined work that really gets you to that next level.
Yeah, I think that's a really hard mental transition. When an agent starts to kind of find success and they're making, a couple $100,000 a year. I mean, that's comfortable, but
Right.
it's like you know what it takes to get there, but to get from there anywhere else, you do have to learn the systems, and have to learn how to streamline and offload tasks and hire people in for the things that you're not good at or take you too long to do. And I think that's almost harder than even starting your business, because that's kind of where I'm at right now, honestly. Like, I can repeat a multiple successful year over and over and over, and I could be comfortable for the rest of my life. But I also know there's a lot more that I could be doing and a lot that I should be offloading in order to really scale a business. And I mean, that sounds like that's your strength. So maybe I need to pick your brain.
Yeah, and that's, as the COO, we have, 22 employees at Better Path Homes. We have two different divisions. One's an investment arm that sells out, wholesale properties. We have, investments we keep, investments we partner with, and then the other side is the new build division. And building new properties has been eye-opening to, I think, everybody at the company. We've got 3 project managers and they all specialize in one part of the build. There's a lot of people that just say, hey, here's 10 projects, run them until completion. Well, I don't believe in that. I believe that you can specialize and become so good at one particular part of a business that you can explode somebody out. And then if you get overwhelmed or the volume becomes too much, that person knows how to hire that person to help with the tasks that they were struggling with, right? So it's that tiered structure, but it's also that trust that, like, people can actually do the job that you're asking of them. So I think that's the biggest hurdle that people have, is that constructive criticism without micromanagement, right? So like micromanaging somebody is so draining on everybody, right?
Mhm.
But like not paying attention at all isn't going to train them, and then there's going to be mistakes. So that balance is very, very hard for people to cross. And once you can get that, and you can have people you trust, they have the same passion as you, grow that person. Don't tell them what to do, let them make those mistakes and help them along the way. And when they make the mistake and fix it, it feels so much better than when they throw their hands up and turn to you and you do it. So like
Mhm.
that's something I learned at Better Path too, because I didn't have any employees when I was doing the hedge fund stuff. Now that I have these employees, I'm starting to see that, like, whatever. And then I think the other part of what I want to do is there's two things that I look for in an employee and a partner and whatever, right? So somebody who brings joy and somebody who reduces the drama, right? So like if you reduce the drama but you're dry and I don't really want to work with you, doesn't work, right? But if you're awesome and you're so fun, but man, it's just drama,
Mhm.
again, the same. It's got to be both. And if it's not both, then things are going to go downhill quick eventually, whether it's right away or whatever. And fun people are harder to fire than dramatic. But either
Sure.
way, that's something that I've learned right away. Like, again, if you can have that kind of like fun person that you like to talk to, and they're entertaining, but they're also like problem solvers and givers, and they're not takers and just draining you of energy. That's a good way forward.
Well, and I think that's very reflective of Better Path as a whole. I mean, we had one of their disposition manager speak at one of our meetups, and their entire team came out and like made a night of it, and they were just
Yep.
cheering her on and like having dinner, and they stayed and had a drink, and it was just really fun. And I think that you guys do a fantastic job, and you can tell that the synergy's there. So I think that that's very reflective and true to your word that you do hire fun people who don't seem to have any drama from what I can tell.
Yeah, and it's been like, I think it's easy too for people in my position to, you know, look at blame and look at whatever and start getting on people. Like, this market right now, currently, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Right now, it's tough to sell a house, it's tough to buy a house, it's tough to do anything in real estate right now. So to have a group of people that you trust and you can have these conversations with, is so important. And this time right now is where you really start to figure out who's going to get their boots on, right? And who is just going to complain and whine. And I think that's reflective of all my project managers right now. I mean, the one guy I heard from our agent who sells our new builds, like, oh, they didn't like the rocks in the yard. I call him for one of our meetings. And he's like, hang on, I got to change my shirt. I'm sweating my off because I was shoveling stones out of the yard. I'm like, you drove all the way out to Hickory? He's like, I just had a couple minutes this morning. I figured to do that instead of working out, right? Didn't ask this guy, whatever. You got the other guy, he's on paternity leave, and he's like, I want to work the whole time. And I was like, don't do that. He's like, I love this job. I will miss you guys. I can't. I got to do it. So he's in there. He's talking to us. He's doing all the things, right? He's pushing things forward. You just have a group of people that you surround yourself with that are excited. And when you're excited too, I guess I'm an excited person. I'm Italian. My emotions are on my sleeve. There's no drama. I'll let you know what's going on. New York Italian. I'll tell you what's up. I'm going to scream at you, and then we'll hug it out. Right. So let's keep it going. It's like, there's no reason for any of the extra drama. There's just not, and be upfront with people. And that's it. You got to let them know what's going on.
I like that a lot.
Love it.
Real quick, I'm curious, what are the 3 specializations you have for the people who manage your new builds?
So we have a lot due diligence person. So they look through all of the counties, the surveys, they call the people at the county like for taps and all that other stuff. So we have one person who just specializes in pretty much contract of the lot to close.
Okay.
We have what I call an asset manager who manages the portfolio of lots, makes sure all the numbers work, all the contracts are in with the builders, all that stuff. So he's doling out the properties at a good time for the market and all that kind of stuff. And again, making sure net profits are there as comps change, making sure the builds reflect what's going on, all that stuff. And then we've got a build coordinator who, from break ground out, manages quality control and relationships with the builders and making sure everything is good there. So we do have an agent who sells our builds too. I thought it would be extremely tough for me to do it anyway. And also we just can't, again, scale and get somebody in there who's a professional. Rebecca Sosa has been our agent with Allen Tate. She's amazing lady. And again, I saw a lot of qualities and like what I like to do for high volume. So she checked a lot of the boxes and she's awesome. And so she does our sales. So we do have a couple contractors. Obviously we have builders, we have surveyors, we have agents, we have all these other things. And the 3 of them manage all those relationships. We have a person who brings in land and does those sales as well. And our disposition does sell a lot. Sometimes if they're like septic and well, we don't want them because that doesn't qualify for what we build. We'll sell those out too. So you guys are probably seeing stuff coming out that's land too. It's not because they're bad deals. They just don't match what we want to be doing right now. And again, it's the hardest thing for an entrepreneur to say is like, don't build the shiny object, build the same thing over and over and take your builds from where we were 35 builds last year. We're gonna be at about 85 this year and, probably into the 150 for next year. So doubling growth every year over year. It just, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot of work on these guys that they've done a great job.
Yeah. How do you recommend an entrepreneur, and we can, I guess specialize even into real estate, kind of sits down and figures out what their specialization is or could be?
Yeah, I think you got to look at your personality type first. Are you analytical? Are you, a person who can sell ice to an Eskimo? What kind of person are you? And figure that out first. I'm an analytical person who likes to just niche down into one thing, and so much so that I could never be a CEO. That's why I'm glad to be COO. I'm glad to be the guy that's taking the vision and then make it a reality. Right? I can't do the vision really. That's not my specialty. Some people only can do the vision where they have a great idea for a product, but they could never turn the screws or figure out even how to build the thing. Right. So you've got to understand who you are, first of all, and then once you get there, what is the thing that makes you feel the most passion is the next thing. And again, that sounds so corny and cheesy, but like, what is the thing that it is? And we started building these houses at the end of 2019. We have helped a ton of people. Now we've sold to investors, but last year, 2021 was one of our best years. We sold to end users. We sold to retail buyers. And I'll tell you, there was how many amazing stories with people who couldn't afford a house before and they could afford ours, right? We ignored the cash offers and picked theirs, right? So it's like all of these things that got everybody super fired up to like hear these stories, take these pictures with these people. And like what, so those are the main things that you got to get fired up. You got to get passionate about what you're doing. And I keep joking around with everybody that's like, well, we'll be working together for the next 25 years. So, let's figure it out one day at a time. So it's kind of not a joke, right? That's how you got to think about what you're going to be doing. So if you can't picture yourself doing this for 30 years, then that's not it yet. Keep looking.
Yep. Might be time to make a shift. I like that. I want to jump back to, you talked briefly. Obviously, we all know where the market's at right now. What is your opinion of the market, and what would be your advice for agents and or investors to kind of tackle this market head on?
Yeah, this is I feel like this is a pretty win-win for investors right now, throughout the Charlotte market, especially. When you look at some of the hard numbers, the median salary to median house cost, all that stuff. There's growth numbers. There's weather data. There's large company data. Charlotte ranks top almost across the board. So the fact that I've fallen into this market by accident is awesome. But you look at some of these numbers, we're like a 4-1, a 5-1, stuff like that. The next closest market is Nashville at like a 6.5-1. So like to make 100 grand there, you need to come up with $650,000 to buy a median house there.
Mhm.
Charlotte's like 400,000 and the median's like 90. So those numbers can change and that median will only go down. And, I think that's why a lot of the interest has been here. And when you look at the market, there's what I've been referring to with our people as the Charlotte backstop. There's only so far prices can really go before it gets out of control and someone will buy them up, right? The rents here in Charlotte are never going to go below 15 or $1,600 for your standard little 3-2 house, right? So there you go. They've got a backstop built in. That's like, if I get a $225,000 house, I can sleep at night knowing that probably going to be okay, right? And we may look back on this podcast in 2 or 3 years, be like, you remember that idiot with his craziness and the real estate market collapse? But there is a backstop, right? We were very close to it as it stands, and our backstop did not go very far from where the prices were, which really points to the health of the market. There's just so much money in this market that I think it's good. So win-win is if you can buy a house for 230, 240, or whatever the case is. Okay, well, the real estate market continues to crumble. You've got that rent. Someone else is paying that bill for you, and you've hit the pause button. Don't sell it at 220 at a loss. Just pause it. Get a renter in there, right? And then 3 years from now, when things recover, as they will, 330, 350, 280, whatever the case is, you've still got someone to pay your mortgage down, and then you've come out ahead and you can sell that property or refinance it. So that's the one win. Or the other win is that this is way overblown. Everybody's just going to get used to these mortgage rates. Everything will recover, and you're getting properties, especially through like our company or any of the other companies wholesaling properties, selling new builds, whatever. Buy them, because if things just are pausing right now because everyone's shocked, things will recover, and then you will be even shorter term on the good end. So either way, I think that the investors have a very unique opportunity right now. If you can source some cash and you can get some kind of cool financing or get creative with somebody and have that communication of like, hey, I love your mortgage. Can I have it? Right. That's an amazing opportunity. I don't think one that will probably come again for a long time. So I think it's a great opportunity for that.
I ran across a saying, it was right when the market kind of started to shift, and I like it, and I think about it a lot, in that there's not necessarily a good market or a bad market. There's just markets that favor different people. And I think
Right.
that really, really applies, especially here, because again, it's not super great for a first-time home buyer right now. I mean, yeah, you've got a little bit more negotiation power. You can be pickier, but you're paying a hell of a lot more for your mortgage.
Yeah.
But this is a great time for investors, especially while everyone else has kind of taken a step back because they're like, I don't know what's going to go on. The people who are serious and the people who, know what they're doing, I think are jumping in at a fantastic time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's important to think long term. My accountant is also my real estate buying partner. We've got our separate LLC for owning rentals, and we invested in Rock Hill when it was really bad, right? It's become a lot better and a great place to invest your money. But, we've got a couple pretty rough properties, and they have tripled in appreciation so far, and we haven't even begun yet, right? So I mean, like, you can get some deals of people who don't want anything to do with their house. They've got their panic mode, like all this other stuff. They just want to get out of these properties, right? Back in 2021, you couldn't get out of it. You could sell your house 400 different ways. Now it's a little tougher. So when you eliminate a whole pool of buyers, like the retail buyer, right? The retail buyer is not eliminated from new builds because there's warranties in place. They're not eliminated from flips necessarily, except for they're a little bit higher price, right? But they are eliminated from properties that need 20 and 30 grand in
Mhm.
rehab, right? Just like paint, carpet stuff. People are not going to buy those right now. So you know who should? First time home buyers, people who are going to live in them, put the sweat equity in. There has never been a better time to invest your own time and effort into a property and do some of this creative financing. And this is like since 2016 or 17 when I got started, there was tons of people doing this stuff. And my old real estate partner, he would buy a house in Kannapolis, flip it, sell it for 180. Buy it for 40, flip it, sell it for 180. He just started churning out this stuff, and it's going to come to that point again where you can buy a cheaper property, fix it up, live in it or don't. Great time to get into real estate for sure, and for investor or for agents too. It's time to make some of those big relationships with people who have some cash that want to get involved. Now's your time if you want to scale a business up. This is kind of when I got involved in like a 2016 market, which is very similar to this one. So great time to scale.
Yep. Yep. And it's crazy. I mean, I have a pretty steady flow of clients who are from like California or New York, and exactly to what you said, it's cheaper to spend their money here. It's a solid investment. Midterm housing right now is like off the charts, doing fantastic. So it's interesting that I kind of have this steady stream of people coming here now, and I feel a little guilty because all my first time home buyers have to compete against that. But it is what it is, and um, it's the market we're in.
Yeah. And I will say this though, the only red flag I do see is what mortgage companies are beginning to do, right? So the 2-1s and the buy downs and the balloons and all this other stuff that happened in '07.
Yeah.
So I think it's just everybody who has a retail client, be very careful with the kind of advice you give and what, we don't want people overextending themselves. Right. And this is what happened before. There was a lot of this kind of stuff going out there of these garbage loans. And everyone says, oh, well, this time it's different. This time's never different with people who are very money hungry. Right. So I don't trust anybody personally. I like to have my own life in my own hands as much as I can, right? There's so much stuff that happens externally to what you can control. So control as much as you can, right? And I think it's just important to make sure if you do have retail clients that are looking at some of these options, make sure they fully grasp what a $2,000 payment is in 2 years. Yeah, it's $1,200 right now, but there's a lot of things that need to happen for you to be able to afford $800 more a month, right?
Yeah.
So I do see that as a potential risk to the market, right? I think if things do continue going down, again, investors are here in Charlotte at least to pick them up. And yeah, of course, Florida is down 45% year over year. Last year, yeah, $900,000 property sells for 600 grand, and all of a sudden the numbers explode, right?
Sure.
Inventory up 500%. Well, yeah, one house to 7, right? So like all that stuff is garbage. I think it's just the end of the day, like I said, just try and think of a backstop. What is that? What is that number that you feel comfortable owning a house at? And that's it. So, and again, you should never own a piece of property for an investment unless you're either going to sell it as an investment flip or you're going to have it for 10 years. Like 5 to 10 year runway is the minimum. So just keep those things in mind, and I don't think you'll get anybody in trouble. Too bad.
Too bad. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what your day-to-day now looks like. So you're COO of Better Path. It sounds like you've got some rental properties on the side as well. I know you still own your own real estate brokerage. I don't know if you're doing anything with that, but what does your day-to-day look like now?
Yeah, so my real estate brokerage is for friends and family right now. I just wouldn't have the time to manage both. I have my own, obviously personal investments too that I can do some things in there. Um, the company itself has the two main divisions, and then within those divisions, about 3 or 4 different divisions that people run the various things, right? So again, the new build side has the lot side, the asset side, and the construction side. The investment side has transactions, marketing, dispositions, and acquisitions, right? I've cut everything up to, again, have specialists, have people that are professional in one aspect of investing or one aspect of building. Each one of those divisions needs a weekly meeting, each one of those people I'd like to meet one-on-one with once a week. And then we have our general, divisional meetings once a week too. So you're talking about 8 different hour-long meetings for each one of the specific divisions. The 2 actual whole divisions has their own 2-hour meetings a day or a week. And then I've got, again, meeting with people for lunch and just talking general stuff. So my meetings they take up my whole week. So, and that's the point, right? The point is for me to spend an hour with somebody, or 2 hours, if you count the other meeting too, to make sure they're aware of what's going well, what's going bad, for them to brag about themselves, talk about what's going on, get excited. When you leave a meeting with me, I want you to feel better than when you came in, right? If something's bothering you, tell me. I want you to feel better because we talked about it, right? So my week is just very meeting heavy and all that stuff, which I enjoy. I like working with people directly and being that mentor and that coach, and not being the person who's doing that person's job. If they're like, hey, can you write this email for me? I'm going to say no, send it to me and I'll review it, right? It's very important to be very clear on what you're doing. So that's most of it. Obviously, there's the buck stops here, right? So I am the final decision maker on whether or not to buy a lot, to what type of home goes on there, what's the sales price, So there's a lot of that too, right? A lot of review, a lot of double checking, a lot of signing documents, a lot of spreadsheets and stuff like that too. So being kind of that final decision maker, and then Heather is our CFO. The two of us spend a lot of time together. She's my work wife. And, at the end of the day, it's the person who I got to make sure I run all my decisions by, make sure we have the financing, the cash, the lenders happy. What do they need? All that kind of stuff too. So that's in a nutshell, I guess.
I love it. I love it. Well, you sound very passionate about it, which is very important, especially as you're hyping everybody else up.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's a project or a goal that either you personally or you alongside Better Path is working on, kind of as a future goal, I guess?
Yeah, we have it's really interesting. We have these students from the University of Massachusetts, the business school. They're running some data reports for me right now, and I have them looking at population data, growth data, income data, all that kind of stuff, starting in Charlotte and then branching out and then branching out and then branching out, right? So my goal is to provide even more data for people who want to move here, want to build here, want to live here, right? That's step one. Step two, what's that next market? Like, is it Greenville, South Carolina? Is Intel building some plant in some city nearby? Like, what's the next big place that we can build some of these starter houses and do some stuff and invest? And then where's the next big city? Is it going to be Nashville? Is it Knoxville? Is it somewhere in Florida? Is it, whatever. So I've got them doing some data searching to begin that process. And I think Charlotte's been doing a bunch of stuff with their UDOs and trying to change what is it going to take to build a house in Charlotte, right? They understand right now it's hard to sell a house for, 350,000 or below in Charlotte. So they're going to try to start looking at doing some things too. So I want to start working on that. Another big goal we have is to do more company outreach stuff. We're helping the men's shelter in Rock Hill next week. We just played in the golf tournament with the Charlotte Rescue Mission. So we really want to do more of that kind of stuff. We'd love to eventually kind of build a house for somebody kind of thing too. So the owners of the company are extremely passionate at helping people. That's why we build these starter homes, right? Instead of these, $800,000 mansions that we try to sell and all that stuff. We're not trying to be on HGTV. We're trying to help this housing issue that Charlotte has, one lot at a time. And when Charlie, our salesman, calls these people with lots, he says, "This is what we're going to build." We're not trying to change the neighborhood into some $500,000 ritzy neighborhood. We're trying to build houses for people that need it in your local community. You've owned this land for 35 years. Like, sell it to us, not to that other person, because we care,
Yeah.
And it sounds corny, but it's true.
No, it is. That's great. And I love that. Real quick, I think this email was from you. I remember Noelle sent it out. I think you wrote it. It was either you or Zach. Just kind of like the state of Charlotte, the state of the market, and it was very well done. And for someone who's not analytical, I loved that resource. But for someone who's not analytical, doesn't really enjoy digging into the data like you do, I know you mentioned really quickly, and maybe you just repeat those. What are some of the things that you're looking at when you're kind of studying the market and studying the growth of a market in particular?
Yeah, so I think the biggest things to be aware of is that whole ratio of active properties to under contract properties, right? If you start seeing a stack up of active properties, that's a red flag. Now, it could itself by, who knows. Every month I pull the MLS data on how many active properties and how many under contract properties there are in each one of the cities that we're building in. And I do that to make sure that the market is healthy. If I saw 22 actives last week and now I see 32, and there was 10 under contract and now there's 4, that means stuff isn't moving, right? Be in areas that things are healthy. If you see 20 more properties and there's 30 under contract, right? Things are moving and that's healthy. So I think that's a big one. Um, Understanding the basics, or at least having a friend who understands the basics, whether that's a mortgage person or whatever, but understanding, what is the federal government going to do? What does these rate hikes mean? What is all this, right? I love macroeconomics, so I understand it pretty well. But even me, right? Short-term rates versus the federal minimums and all these other things, right? I was like, well, they raised rates 4%. Why hasn't mortgages gone up 4%? And there's a lot of reasons. I won't even get to them. You can go on my podcast for that. But I think at the end of the day, like, you got to make sure you understand or surround yourself with people who can fill in those gaps. And, macroeconomics are very challenging, right? And everybody's got their own opinion too. That's the other thing. But like, if you don't understand how mortgage rates work, ask somebody. There's plenty of mortgage people out there that'll love to help you out. How does insurance work? What kind of insurance should I get? Don't answer those questions. Get somebody else who knows that. How does it work with a 1031? What can I do with a property? Can I give this to my kid? I don't know. Call an accountant, right? So like, surround yourself with smart people, and you yourself will become smarter, and you'll also look better to both your clients, to your employees, and whatever. And that email, Kate, and I appreciate the the props on that. It was a hard email to write, right? Because it's something that I didn't want to like have people just glaze over, but it's also very important to talk about this stuff. And a couple of our lenders were like, "Whoa, this sounds terrifying." And I'm like, it is terrifying, right? But know that you're investing your company in somebody who understands the basics of this,
Yeah.
understands the supply and demand, and can keep your money safe, right? We made a bunch of changes to our houses, scaling down our builds, price per square foot analysis. We did all these things, right? Way ahead of everybody. We're talking like March. I got like that spidey sense that something bad was coming. I started hearing these rumors about the Federal Reserve, raising interest and all that stuff. And I dug into it with some mortgage people, and they said, you better be prepared to build smaller houses, lower your costs, all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting read. I don't know if that answered your question, but like I said, the macroeconomics, like I said, you've got to surround yourself with people who understand what's going on.
Well, and that really goes back to understanding your specialization and sticking to your specialization and letting everyone else stick to theirs. Because,
That's
like
right.
you said, that ends up making not only you look better, but it ends up scaling your business so much quicker too.
Yeah, and I'd say, gotten lucky. I don't really think luck has too much to do with a lot of the stuff, right? At the end of the day, but we've gotten lucky that the builds. We had a very good 2021. We sold a lot of stuff, a lot of investment properties as well. We had a couple things sitting on the market that just didn't make it in time for the before the rate hikes, and we're sitting on them now. But we made a ton of changes to all the stuff that we have coming out the pike. They've gotten better comps, they've gotten better sizing, they've gotten better cost structure. We knew this was coming before it happened, and we can position ourselves just better than other people, right? So it's important to do some of that stuff, or else you're going to get blindsided. I think a lot of agents got blindsided. They were still signing listing agreements with old comps. They weren't thinking, right? You got
Mhm.
to think, and then you got to act. And sometimes it's funny, right? I'm good at a lot of things, but growing something is not. I'm not very good, right? At like being like the risk guy. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be the risk guy, right? That's what Zach is for, my CEO. He's like, come on, build 300 houses. I'm like, I can't. I got all these things. I can't do it. I can't. I'm gonna have a heart attack. He's like,
Yeah.
let me have the heart attack. You just do it, right? And that kind of stuff. So it's important to know that. And then the other thing too, I've never been a salesy person. And everyone says, no, you're a good salesman. I may be a good salesman, but I'm not salesy. And I think that may be why, right? Investors don't need that. I don't need to sell you this pen, right?
Mhm.
I need to just make sure you need the pen. That's it. And I can tell you whether you do or not. I've talked more people out of a house than I have into a house. I think people respect that. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to take to be a listing agent in 2023 and beyond, is not by telling people what they want to hear or taking a chance and wasting someone's time. Tell them what you're going to do and why you're different, and stick to it, right? So I think it's super key to just, again, your strengths are your biggest asset. You've got to understand them before you can start
Mhm.
your own business. Otherwise, you'll just be punching a clock 9 to 5, right?
Yep.
Being somebody else's person.
Yep. I love that. Well, it
Absolutely.
comes down to being genuine too. I think that's really this is a relationship business. And if
Yeah.
you're going to be super salesy and you're going to go into a listing presentation, it just feels icky. So
Yeah.
if you're genuine and you actually provide the value and, actually care about the person, then that person's going to win every day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I always try to be that person. We try to be today, like you said, we try to be honest about what we send out. We try to be honest about the properties we're building, any of the risks that we see. We can only do so much, but at the end of the day, like, we've got a lot of investors that are out of state, out of town, first timers. Like, we have walkthrough videos and analysis and all these other things. So, like, we want people to feel comfortable that this is their biggest decision ever, right? That first rental you ever buy, if the HVAC goes out, you are in trouble, right? So the first one you ever get has got to be, somebody's got to tell you it's okay or it's going to be
Mhm.
okay. My first one, the siding caught on fire. I had a literal dumpster fire on my rental. The dumpster caught on fire and the whole side of my house got torched. It's like $6,000.
Oh
Luckily,
no.
Greg and I were partners, so it was only $3,000 each, but still, like, you never know what's going to happen and what's going to take you down. So you got to be at least confident that the asset you're buying is a good purchase. And people like us and our company are there to tell you it's going to be okay. You're making a good decision. Good job. Go you, right? It's going to be okay. So I think that's really important for people, especially the first timers and stuff. It's very key.
And of course, when they're actually making that good decision, right?
Yes.
Reminding them of
Yes.
that.
And
And
when they're making it, it will tell you
right.
this
And
is
I tell
not for you.
people exactly. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm not here to convince you as an agent or as a consultant. If you're coming to me for investment advice or whatever, I'm not here to convince you. So if you're sitting back on the other side of the table or the other side of the phone and you're like, well, tell me why I need this. I'm like, then you don't. You don't, because it's not my job to convince you. It's my job to help you out, provide value, be a resource to you, and then you're going to make your own decisions. And I'm going to help you with whichever decision you decide to make.
Yeah, and I always think of it too. I don't know if you guys have listed a property for a friend or a family member, right? It's the most stressful thing you can
Oh
do
yeah.
because if you suck or you ruin it, it's the worst, right? I
Oh
treated
yeah.
every one of my clients like they were a friend and family and not as like, oh, hugs. No, I treated everybody like this is what I think, but it's not on me, right? Here is your profile. So I just sold my buddy's friend house in the old neighborhood in Bryant Park, and I told him, listen, the aggressive, this will sell price is X. The take a chance, I think a couple people will see it and you'll get an offer probably is Y. And then the home run derby is Z, right? It is up to you what you want to do, but you've got to know the risks associated with each one of these things. If you list it at home run derby price and things don't sell, I'm not going to ever say I told you so, right? I'm going to do my best to do it, but you've got to understand. And what is your situation? Your situation, you've just bought a new house. You want to get out of it right now. Don't do the home run derby. Do this one, right? We ended up selling
Mhm.
for home run derby because, why not? But it is what it is, right? So it's important to act that way. And again, to treat everybody like their family. It's more like, I don't want to make a mistake. I want to make sure I have told you as much information for you to make a good decision. I want to consult with you and then we'll work together to make that happen. So I think that's the key to any kind of like thing. Just treat people good.
Yeah.
Under promise and over deliver.
That's the idea.
All right. Well, let's transition into our last round. We lovingly call the lightning round. We have not prepped you for any of these questions. We're just going to have a little bit of fun. Okay. I don't know which one I'm going to ask you. If you could sit on a bench and chat with someone for 1 hour, who would it be?
Oh, Forrest Gump, hands down.
Is
No,
there
just
any
kidding.
explanation on this?
How stereotypical on the bench too.
Yeah, right. No, I think I really think Elon Musk. So I actually use a lot of the things that he has done and kind of transition it into Better Path stuff, right? The passion, the drive, the employees, everything that he's doing. He was the first one to offer all kinds of stuff for his employees and stuff like that. His dream, his passion, everything. Like I try to think that way. So I would love to talk to that guy, crazy lunatic that he is, but like Elon's my guy. So I would love to talk to him.
I love it.
I love it. I love it. Matt, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, broadcaster. So I used to play football in the front yard and like announce my own games and like play football and all this stuff. My mom thought it was like, oh, poor guy doesn't have any friends. Oh no, I don't need friends, right? It's broadcast time. So I wanted to be a sports broadcaster so bad and engineer into a real estate person instead. So.
Oh, well, there you go.
I love it.
What are 5 things that you cannot live without?
So you always say wife and kids, right? I mean, that's a big one. And it's funny because it's proven true now. My wife and I went away to the beach and I missed those kids. So I couldn't wait to get away, right? I missed them so much. That's a big one. My 2010 Nissan Altima has made it through all the challenges, right? I mean, it's funny to say a car, but like everyone's like, when are you going to get rid of that hoopty, right? I'm like, it's the first car I bought out of college, man. I don't know. It's still going. It's going to be my daughter's car. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So that one, 5, let's see. Um, so we built a porch, like a screened in porch in our backyard. And that's really nice. It's kind of a place for me to kind of escape. And I have like bird feeders and all kinds. I'm like a crazy old bird lady. So there's birds back there and whatever. So I love that. I got a garden back there and stuff too. So like my whole backyard situation is coming along, but that's a big thing for me to have. Let's see. 2 more things.
You can do one more.
I'll do one more. So I've got a group of 8 buddies from college. They're all gonna be my friends forever. We all joke around. We're gonna own like some homestead somewhere in Montana when we all retire and just watch Virginia Tech lose and just do whatever. We all met various ways, but they've been my best friends forever, and they're just the greatest. We come to all each other's weddings. The last guy's getting married here pretty soon. He's the number 7 of 7. Guy number 8, he comes and goes. So we'll see what he does. But number 7 guy, we get the last thing coming up. But those guys are amazing impacts to my life, and really got me everything I could out of college, and partying, but also like they were really good students. They all have wives that are amazing people. We have great family lives. We bring our kids everywhere now. They're just upstanding guys and like the best I could ask for.
I love that. You need that. Everyone needs that in life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. What is your ideal vacation in one sentence?
I think that's changed. It used to be like beach, but now I'm like escape to the mountains. Maybe I don't know. I'm in a warm climate, so I think I'm going more cold. So I think mountain trips are my favorite. I love those. We want to try to get up to Alaska to go really cold, but try to do something like that. So
dang, yeah, we opened Caton's eyes about the Colorado mountains earlier this year, and she came out in March with Joe, and that was a ton of fun. She's a beach girl through and through, but I think she enjoyed a little bit of cold in March.
Yeah, we're a hiking family, so
yeah,
mountains make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Well,
and kids can drown really easy too, so the beach is tough.
That's true.
So there's that.
Well, the good news is that the mountains are a closer drive than the beach, so that works out for you. Okay, my last question for you in this round is, what is your favorite real estate or business related book?
Let's see. I was a Benjamin Graham guy. He's got some basic investing books that are out there. I wish I read more stuff. I really don't. A lot of my information that I get is through Motley Fool and those guys. I got into investing through those guys. So I read more like newsletters and podcasts and stuff like that than books. But Benjamin Graham obviously has the official Investor 101 book. Buffett sends out his thing every year at his investor meeting about the whole thing. And you can learn so many things from people like that have just been through so much, and you're in the snippet of their life, where it's like, oh, you're down 20%. I'm up 10%. Right. He's like, sit down, kid. Right. $5,000 invested in, Berkshire is worth 50 million or what a stupid calculation it is now. So yeah. So I definitely do a lot more like newsletters or podcasts. I wish I read more books. I just bite-sized pieces is what I can eat.
Well, when you're as busy as you are, then you consume content how you consume content, and that's it.
That's right.
Okay, our last question for you is if you lost everything except your knowledge, what would you do in your first 30 days to close a deal?
Let's see. I mean, I think the first thing I would do is find the product first. Find the house, find the thing that you're going to sell. So um, that's the first thing. And then once you have the product that's available, whether it's cheap housing, level two cosmetic, whatever the case is, find the person who's going to most be likely to buy that. And that's the way you can get started in real estate very quickly. That's why wholesalers do okay, right? They find a distressed product and then they find a buyer who buys distressed product. Same principle. So yeah, always find the product first. I think people get like, I'm going to go into real estate. Well, real estate's a big word. You need to really figure out what in real estate first and what drives you first. And then the buyers will naturally come, or the sellers, or whatever the case is. So
Hmm. I like that. Real estate's a big word.
it's
It
a
is.
big
Real
word.
I
estate
like
is
that
a
one.
big
I'm gonna
word.
start saying that. I like that. Matt, where can people connect with you on social?
Yeah, so Better Path Homes, we've got a growing Instagram. I'm really interested in getting more stories and like all that kind of stuff. We got a crazy group of people doing all kinds of stuff all the time. We've got pictures of us at the golf event and all this other stuff. So our Instagram, I'm really trying to grow into something that is more fun and a little bit more behind the scenes. Our Facebook has posts all the time for Better Path Homes, and I don't Shannon is trying to get me onto TikTok, and we'll see how that goes. But
I'd love to
for
see you on
sure, the
TikTok.
Instagram, I really want to get some followers and get some cool content out there for that. It's a lot of good stuff. Me personally, I don't have too much stuff, like I said, for my real estate business, but always looking to connect with people in various ways. So,
Awesome. Well, we'll connect. We'll drop that below in the show notes as well, so people can connect with you there.
awesome.
Absolutely. Matt, thanks for joining us today. And thank you guys for joining us today who are listening. If you like this week's dose of the RE Junkies podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a crazy real estate story or a great case study, click the submission link in the show notes to be featured on a future episode. Submissions can remain anonymous, and we'll catch you junkies next time on the only real estate podcast of its kind.